In the valley below, cradled by jagged, thorn-like rock clusters, tens of thousands of corpses lay scattered everywhere, each body still clutching a cold, sharp weapon. Amid that battlefield, one person had miraculously survived, though he was in no better shape, coughing up a mouthful of blood along with the bleak thought, "I'm really dead this time." His arm, bandaged and bloodied, clutched the weapon driven deep into his body. But try as he might, it wouldn't budge. The holy sword had pierced his heart. This struggling movement caught the eyes of the group opposite, like the light at the end of the tunnel. "It's over, we've finally brought him down." He bent forward to reveal dozens of sharp blades protruding from his back, a stark contrast to the gruesome nickname they spat out. The continent's demon, the summoner of spirits. Now that title from his enemy's mouth sounded like mockery. But he had no mood to care, focusing all his remaining strength on gripping the sword at his chest. Unfortunately, no matter what he did, the situation wouldn't turn. Cold sweat welled at his temples as exhaustion told him he was standing at death's door. At that moment, a flood of images poured into Archimonde's mind. The continent's 10-year war, this was a joint campaign, the Empire's vanguard, while the elite unit launched the strike. Despite warnings and defensive lines, we still failed. A total rout. Suddenly, a clean-cut figure appeared in stark contrast to his shabby state, making his already furious heart churn with even more irritation. And it was all because of that knight, Northern Cavalry Captain Burkle Lainrin. When he came within range, he stopped and said, "I did not win by my own strength." His golden hair shadowing the cold gaze beneath, hiding Burkle's emotions, leaving only a weary voice. "Thanks to the blood and sacrifice of countless people, my sword could reach you." As he spoke, his tone softened as if soothing a cornered beast. "Stand down, Archimonde, for the sake of this continent's peace." But before Burkle could finish playing the hero, he was loudly cut off by the opponent. "Shut up." Ignoring the tens of thousands of life-threatening wounds, Archimonde mustered his strength to expose the other's hypocrisy. "You watched people die from the plague and now preach about peace. You're worse than beasts." Burkle kept his gaze calmly forward, whether dismissing a dying man or accepting the insult, the horrible night. The contempt in Archimonde's eyes deepened as he spat. "A bunch of hypocrites. I will make humanity pay." No sooner had the words left his mouth than his palm flared with brilliant blue energy. The movement made the surrounding onlookers gape in astonishment. They couldn't help but blurt out, "Is he really going to use dark magic in that state?" A soldier worriedly turned to Burkle for orders. "It's dangerous, finish him now," but the captain's cold reply was only 2 words. "Stop." This command didn't faze anyone. Accusations kept echoing in the hush. 20 million people, 20 million fallen to the plague, and you turned them into your undead army. That's the spark that started this war. Remembering that scene only deepened his righteous fury at the hypocrite opposite. "Don't make me laugh. You think I didn't know." From the depths of his cold blue eyes came a world-weary look. "Among those 20 million were surely your villagers. You did all this for revenge. Am I wrong?" Burkle, named and shamed like that, remained silent without a single rebuttal. After a few frozen seconds, Burkle's sword shifted direction and he declared, oddly unrelated to the topic so far, "I came here for only one reason. It's for the children's future." The silver weapon in his hand was engulfed by a blaze of red power, accompanied by an unmistakable murderous intent. The words hit Archimonde like a bucket of cold water. For a moment his body froze and he could only stammer meaningless syllables. "What did you say?" Burkle calmly explained his stance. "Our choices, beliefs, and hopes are what we must leave to the next generation." Suddenly Archimonde's pupils shrank. A contrasting image formed clearly in his sight, his own rags and grime reflected in that man's eyes. The dark streaks of blood on his face stood out against that clean, oceanic blue, forcing him to realize a harsh truth and the gaze of an upright knight. Coincidentally, the black clouds above parted for a burst of dazzling sunlight, shining straight onto the supposed hero of that world, further cementing Archimonde's sense that they were entirely different. Burkle mouthed the end of his speech. "For the sake of our descendants." Those few simple words, heavy as lead, were too much for Archimonde, who collapsed to his knees. Whether from exhaustion or because something inside him snapped, he weakly uttered surrender. "Finish me." To everyone's surprise, Burkle dropped his weapon, a move that startled the nearby soldiers. "Wait, Burkle, if you discard the holy sword." Before the protest finished, he produced another blade inscribed with purple runes, even more imposing than the last. Without hesitation, Burkle pointed the tip at the kneeling man. Any last words of denial? Though he was the one who spoke up earlier, he couldn't help muttering, "A necromancer like him doesn't die that easily." Suddenly a powerful force struck him, jolting his body violently. Then his thought processes were severed. The last half-formed sentence, "one day," never finished. True to form, Burkle acted decisively. leaving no chance for the enemy to turn the tide. Hot blood spurted into the air and fell like rain, slightly dimming the deep blue of his eyes. The ancient runes on the blade tasted the metallic scent. At this moment they shone all the more brightly. After a few seconds of silence, the soldiers around regained their zeal and cheered. The demon is dead. On the cold ground, Archimond retained a vague thread of consciousness. Amid the cheers, he heard himself falling. But not for long. His eyelids grew unbearably heavy. That was the end of the 10-year Great War, and the end of the continent's so-called demon. Mage Archimond, black clouds rolled in, and the heavens began to hurl down heavy sheets of rain. Thunder screamed without pause, making the warm golden light from the grand manor stand out all the more. In the cozy room, two maids excitedly looked toward one corner. "Did you see that?" The young master's lips just moved. The surrounding chatter bubbled on. "Oh my, is it real? What's waking the fellow up?" Archimond blinked at the unfamiliar scene before him. "Where am I?" Unsure, the two maids smiled and cooed soothingly. "Young Master Klein, are you sleeping well?" They held a carefully preserved portrait of a woman. Her identity was revealed. "Young Master, Madam Priscilla is here to visit. She's your mother." "Try saying it." "Mama," there in the cradle was a chubby newborn, strangely bearing Archimond's consciousness, his body frozen stiff. The maids, seeing the young master trembling and mouthing, erupted with joy. "Say Mama, dear." At that moment he managed his first baby syllable. The two maids were moved to tears, the pendant with that person's portrait swinging non-stop. Amazing, the boy can talk now. Not to disappoint them, the young master not only spoke but uttered a shocking phrase. "Oh, my knight guards, my servants and soldiers, I order you to assemble, obey my command." Unexpectedly, the gap between joy and shock was so thin. The servant turned pale and the necklace slipped from her hand and fell. The thunder outside seemed to take the cue and grew even more frantic. A bolt of lightning struck straight down onto the Lanrent Manor, producing a terrifying, blinding flash. Time flew like a dog across a field. 15 years had passed since that fateful night. In the familiar grounds of the Lanrent household, the maids blushed and all turned to look one way. "Have you seen him yet?" In everyone's view, long model-like legs appeared. Then came the graceful features, accompanied by unabashed praise from the crowd. That face, that hair, truly a masterpiece of the gods, a handsome young man emerged. His looks 3 parts icy, 3 parts arrogant, and 4 parts danger. Do not approach the living. The combo of that hair and silver eyes could enchant any female creature within a 1-kilometer radius. As Klein drew near, the applause only grew. "He's so handsome today, absolutely radiant. What does young Master Klein eat to look like that?" Countless flowery compliments filled his ears. Yet he kept his composure, heart steady, legs unshaken as he continued walking. Suddenly a deep voice rang right behind him, freezing Klein. "Found you." Before he could react, a bucket of water was dumped on his head, and the irate man behind added without mercy, "Get out, you demon." But a second later, the priest put on a puzzled look and said with syrupy charm, "Odd, you just had the exact same gaze as Archimond a moment ago." He couldn't keep up the act. The next line he claimed as his own, ignoring the maid's scornful looks. "Just kidding, 3 of them were enchanted. Lucky I purified them in time." Klein, wearing a deadfish expression, retorted, "It's not easy to spit out those insane lines so confidently. Aren't you tired of performing this pointless purification ritual year after year?" Garrison explained solemnly, not at all absurd. "Archimond's spirit is dwelling in your body, so I must periodically cleanse that evil presence." Klein wearily repeated the familiar line for the nth time. "I told you it's not Archimond." But when he turned his face, he got a spray from Garrison's bottle, prompting the exact expression of Archimond. Klein rubbed his chin and muttered loud enough for the other to hear. "Is he really insane?" He stepped back, repeating the insult over and over. "Crazy, crazy." Before he could flee, Garrison shouted an order to seize him. 2 servants appeared from nowhere, loudly acknowledged, and gave chase. The ringleader surveyed the scene and devised the punishment. "For insolence you'll be bathed in holy water naked." Klein, enraged, shouted back, "That's too much. I told you I'm Klein. My name is Klein, you crazy priest. Have you any decency?" As he ran, memories of his past life gradually surfaced. He never imagined things would turn out this way. He couldn't fathom it at all, since he had clearly died that day. Recalling that night gave Klein a splitting headache. His mind had surely been severed, but when he opened his eyes, he was in the body of a child. And worse, the first words he uttered were Archimond's summoning incantation. Because of that, his childhood was endlessly gossiped about. And so he was labeled a demon and shipped off to a monastery as soon as he turned 3. Things weren't great back then, until heaven's light fell on the child, and he met the old man who called himself a church priest. His imposing bearing was the complete opposite of his status. Yet he turned out to be the lifeline for a mouse that had been hiding all those years. At that meeting, Garrison mistook him for his previous life name, Archimond. No, young Master Klein was only the beginning. You could say it was hell to hell. Mornings waking to Garrison's 24-hour prayer recitals, and enduring Garrison's freezing garlic bath therapy, soaking in purity to drive out darkness and ignorance. Sometimes he switched it up with Garrison's purifying fire show, which just made Klein scream, "What kind of hell is this?" And thus he suffered all kinds of torture in the name of cleansing. The peaceful grounds were forever echoed by cries of agony and pleas for mercy. Yet 15 years passed, and Klein never got used to the torture schedule. Right now he looked like a corpse sitting dazed with a birthday hat. Klein's personal maid, Aylin, knelt sincerely beside him with hands clasped, praying that the young master live up to heroic lineage and soon become a healthy family member. Her monotonous voice only deepened Klein's fatigue. Pray to the Holy Spirit in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Finally, he couldn't stand it, grabbed the hat off his head and hurled it away honestly. Aylin gasped, the hat she'd knitted herself. That soft exclamation snapped Klein back to reality. He felt like a real scoundrel, damn it. I overreacted just now. She must have poured all her heart into knitting it with those little hands. So he scratched his head and mumbled awkwardly, "Sorry, Aylin. I went too far." He moved to pick it up, and before he finished speaking, Aylin dropped a truth bomb flat out. Priest Garrison did that himself. The world froze in that instant. Klein's brain short-circuited and couldn't process the incoming information. Immediately he spun around in fear. By some curse or fate, the person he least wanted to see was looming in a corner. Young Master Klein. Garrison dabbed a big tear from his aged face, moved. "I can't believe you wore the hat I knitted all week." Garrison is truly touched. That cloying cutesy display made Klein nauseous. He tore the birthday hat in half. "Fine, I won't wear it." It was basically a slap in Garrison's face. He immediately reverted to his old trick and screamed false accusations. "It's appeared, the evil spirit of Archimand." Klein wasn't having it and cranked his voice to full volume to retort. "You dirty priest, return my apology, you rotten cleric." Just then, the chamber door opened, and Knight Dunkel solemnly bowed to ask after Priest Garrison. "Have you finished the cleansing ritual?" Then he awkwardly tried to mediate. "Rumors that young Master Klein was possessed have been around for 10 years. Even the church says he's normal now." This sudden truth hit like a pause button, and the two bickering men over there both turned to look. Without warning, Garrison shoved Klein away, replying warmly, "Of course, Captain Dunkel." The two then chatted cheerfully about how the documents the captain requested might be a bit delayed. "Take your time." While Klein lay on the ground, grinding his teeth, and cursing the mad old man for ignoring him yet cozying up to the knight captain. While he was still mentally scoring the old man's political skill, the conversation wound down and Garrison took his leave. "Excuse me, I'll be going now." He didn't forget to cast a glance this way, and "there's always a possibility." Those cryptic words made Klein a bit uneasy. It seemed Garrison didn't want to dwell on it. He turned on his heel and left the room. Well then, of course he left a few parting jabs. "Next Friday is the next cleansing. Bathe well and wait. Keep your body and soul pure." Klein went berserk chasing him. "Why don't you just vanish already?" Unfortunately, his powers were limited. All he could do was pant angrily, watching the other's laugh fade into the distance. "See you." Then Klein flopped onto the sofa, exhausted, damn it. The indignation from the earlier torture began pouring out. A priest torturing people like this? Is he even a real priest? The more he spoke, the more convinced he became. He looked like a muscly-bound demon. Aylin gently stepped forward with something. "Young master, are you really not one of them? Here's your handkerchief." Klein didn't bother thinking and answered right away. "Yeah, I'm absolutely not. I hate that name with a passion." But no one knew his thoughts were wandering the other way. Admitting it would only invite more of that old man's torture. He should be focusing on recovering, yet he's dragged into these rituals. Childhood fatigue flooded back. Since reincarnating, he'd always been monitored, locked in a monastery for 7 years because of rumors that Archimand stuck to him as a kid. The more he thought, the more he realized he'd misplayed things. "Damn, I worked so hard to return to the Duke's mansion only to run into that priest." Dunkel kindly chimed in to defend him. "Appearances aside, he's a representative. There must be a reason he's..." Aylin, curious, turned to ask, "Representative of what?" "Someone with a very high rank." Dunkel paused, weighing his words for a moment. Then he explained in a soft voice that it's a title for the strongest person in the church. Everyone's attitude toward Garrison reinforced this. Aside from the Lane-Rent Dukes, they were people so powerful they had no rivals. Aylin excitedly raised her hand to praise. "The young master's family is so powerful." Her innocence made Dunkel laugh. Sensing the mood lighten, she seized the chance to bait. "May I ask one more question? Who is the strongest duke in the young master's house?" That comparative curiosity made Klein, who was drying his head, pause. Dunkel thought a moment and answered, Everyone's skilled, but I think the current 7th generation Duke is. Before he finished, Klein cut in. The first generation. As a subordinate, Dunkel tried to save face for his lord. You mean the first Duke? But your father, the 7th generation, is only. Klein gave him no chance, no. Klein's face went cold as he emphasized once more. The first generation Duke is the strongest. This stance left Dunkel somewhat bewildered. He didn't dare contradict, so he played along. I understand if the young master says so. Aylin was thrilled to get the answer she wanted. See, I told you the young master admires the first Duke. She even offered what she considered proof. Even now the young master is staring at his portrait. Klein heard it but didn't bother explaining, just brooding. Admire? No, this is. Who would have thought? The exclamation from Dunkel distracted him. It's been 200 years since the first Duke founded this family. He glanced at the portrait opposite and unconsciously repeated, 200 years. Deep in that youth's eyes there was no life at all, only an emotion hard to put into words. I still can't accept it, but perhaps I must face the truth that I, a summoner, made. Images from each portrait flashed through Klein's mind, but were as vague as their memories of him. 7th generation, 6th generation, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd. Only one person appeared clearly, just a corner of his face, and Klein knew who it was. It was the first Duke, Berkel Lainrant. That golden hair and ocean-cold gaze felt uncannily familiar. A smirk tugged at Klein's mouth, as if he were mocking his fate. Reborn as a descendant of the man who once ended his life. As Klein fought to suppress the pain, invading his mind and scream at Berkel, I leisurely watched all that chaotic emotion spill out. And the reason I came here is, for the future of the children. Then his face went cold and he swung his sword, dealing Klein a light cut. The motion was so fast that Klein was still staring at Berkel in shock, when the blade had already passed across. That horrific memory jolted Klein awake. He bolted upright, heart racing so he couldn't help but gasp for air. Klein muttered tiredly as he wiped sweat from his brow. What a crappy dream. Besides, his brain kept reciting his old identity so he wouldn't forget his roots. My name is Archimond, the only one called the continent's demon. But that's in the past. I once went mad with rage and nearly tore the continent apart, until the northern knight Berkel Lainrant's sword ended me. Yet when I woke, 200 years had passed, and I'd been reborn as that bastard's descendant. To add insult, I retained all my memories. I still can't get used to this hair color. Suddenly a deep voice snapped Klein out of his reverie. Master Klein, are you talking in your sleep or what? Or were you dreaming of your Archimond days? He quietly glanced at the other's pretentious expression and continued musing inwardly. Priest Garrison, that lunatic has tormented me like I'm Archimond for years. For now, just play dumb in front of this jerk. As Klein feigned a weary sigh to start his shaky performance, Aylin came barreling in from outside. Master Klein, I heard everything. What you said in your sleep, Master. Destroy the continent, kill them all, Archimond ordered you. Aylin's wild reenactment flustered Klein. Quiet, Aylin, when did I ever say that? In that awkward moment, Vian suddenly knocked and entered. I'm Steward Vian, Master. The sword demonstration is about to begin. Before he finished, Garrison cleared his throat and cut in. Thanks for reporting, Aylin. It seems Master Klein will need to double his time in purification ceremonies. His visage, no less than a grim reaper, froze Klein with fear. But in the next instant, he summoned all his breath to roar in character. Don't make me laugh, you ridiculous priest. A while later, Klein strode down the hall, flanked by 2 servants, and couldn't help but ask. A sword demonstration. Aylin needed no time to think. Yes, sir, this time the Duke personally requested your presence, Master. When Klein tilted his head to ask if his father summoned him, she eagerly held up a bag of cookies and teased. Master, can I have this? The steward couldn't help admonishing her for overstepping. Aylin, you're asking too much of the master. Yet Klein didn't mind and tore the packet open himself. Don't be hard on the girl, Vian. Then handed it to Aylin to enjoy the treat. Look how happy she is. After a moment, Klein probed again. So what's going on? Did father ever call me to watch a show before? Vian fell silent for a few seconds after hearing that, then replied. It seems members from the family branches have arrived. That sent Klein's mind drifting far away at once. Branch families, huh? More annoying pests have come crawling in. Soon after, he was shown the gaggle of relatives. Isn't that Klein over there? Hey, how should we address Klein? Call him Lord Archimond, right? Yes, greetings, brother. Rumor has it you were locked in a monastery for 7 years. Got any juicy stories? Careful now, if he snaps, he'll curse you. Klein casually watched the flashy country mouse lot babbling to one side. These are my father's maternal cousins. Then his gaze shifted to the fat, greasy freeloaders on the other side, and he sighed inwardly. Those must be from the distant northern branch. They only came to freeload. And that group over there? the cousins from the west. For some reason, Klein's eyes kept sticking to Leia. That strange aura made him think she must be. Then a jabby voice cut him off. Isn't that named guy deaf or what? People like you are even in my Lainrant family. Seeing Klein ignore them, the cousins went wild, shouting, "Hey, don't you dare ignore us while the elders speak." Such arrogant words couldn't faze him. What's mine is mine. They don't even bother to remember your names. These distant relatives cause trouble simply because the family I was reborn into is crumbling. Their contempt for a direct heir like me says it all. As that thought ended, Klein glanced down at the sword match below. On the arena floor, it seemed the match had a result as one fighter began showing many weaknesses. Dalton, annoyed at being pressured in the fight, cleared his throat and cursed. "Delaine, you bastard." He hurriedly spun around to put more force into poking his sword at Delaine. "Don't hold back, go all in." "Dalton, man, that pose just enjars the opponent more. Shut up, I'm not beaten yet." Delaine couldn't help but snort. The whole scene made Klein think. If this family has any hope left, it rests on one person, the eldest Lainrant son, a prodigy, and my brother, Delaine Lainrant. No sooner had that thought finished than Delaine on the floor dropped his indifferent expression and muttered, "What a nuisance." Though quiet, Klein heard it and froze to calculate. Thanks to him, the famed swordsmanship school's reputation hasn't crumbled yet. Below, Dalton suddenly prepared a dirty trick. This time won't be like before. That made Klein secretly activate magic. It's the first time I've seen swordplay with my own eyes in this reborn body. That let him clearly see the sword line Dalton was lunging forward with. That cold bastard kept charging straight while Delaine stood motionless, doing nothing. In the next instant, he leapt behind Dalton. The lightning-fast move thrilled Klein. I can see through it. He stared at Delaine's coiled stalking step and thought to himself about the footwork, the way he planted his feet. As Dalton angrily raised his wooden sword to counterattack, this guy, Klein, witnessed Delaine's cold, secret Lainrant technique down to the mana flow. He used the star-attaining sword method to instantly knock Dalton's wooden sword aside. The outcome was obvious, prompting the referee to shout, "Match over." That sound made Delaine unable to hold back a comment. "See, I told you so. This is truly a nuisance for you." Meanwhile, the spectators up on the stands quickly betrayed utter shock. "Do you see that? That's the star-attaining sword. Unbelievable he can pull that off perfectly in front of so many people. Surely this is a warning to the branch families, a flex to show the Lainrants are still fearsome." Klein on the dais felt a chill and instinctively pulled his hair down to hide his face. "What the?" Something just flew into my eye. Suddenly a soft sound rang out, startling him. Klein, not knowing when Delaine had stepped up beside Klein for a quiet chat. "When did you get here?" "I just arrived. Why didn't you give me a heads up?" If he'd known his younger brother was watching, he'd have tried even harder to impress. Klein silently offered a light compliment about Delaine in his head. Skilled, handsome, and good-natured, truly a perfect person. Then replied calmly, "But why are those branch clan people showing up again? If they intended to come here to fleece us of money." Before he could finish the sentence, he was cut off by Heinkel. "Well done, Delaine, you've mastered our family's technique." At the sight of that familiar face, Delaine hurried past Klein to stand before him. "Father, giving me a bit of private space to daydream, this is the current head of the family I was born into. My father." Klein still pricked up his ears to hear Heinkel praise his son. "You must have worked very hard to reach this level." Then he watched them talk cheerfully and fell silent in thought. To him, Delaine's existence was the family's final pride. Dunkel appeared from nowhere and offered a few remarks like an experienced man. The mana level and precision, knights his age are nowhere near this. Truly an exceptional natural talent. When Delaine bashfully tried to be modest, "I'm a bit embarrassed. There's still much lacking." Heinkel immediately cut him off. "Delaine, a Lainrant knight must always be the greatest knight of the Empire. That was the dying wish of our first Duke, Berkel Lainrant. Engrave that in your heart and keep training." Delaine didn't know what to say, so he bowed lightly. "Thank you, father." After admonishing his eldest son, Heinkel immediately turned to the other one. And Klein, called by name, he anxiously looked up at the man, only to see him slowly extend a hand toward him, then sighed softly like a feather and spoke. "I still can't sense any mana from you at all." Not knowing what the other meant, Klein could only say, "I'm sorry, father," then silently speculated gloomily that people only get angry and disappointed when they still expect something. Now that all potential is gone, he's nothing but a useless burden. Dunkel, standing behind Heinkel, suddenly chattered a few words. "Forgive me, sir, perhaps young Master Klein spent his most crucial years in the monastery training swordsmanship." The onlookers took the chance to gossip loudly. "Did you hear? The second young master of the Lainrants has no mana, what far worse than his brother. Told you so, the mainline kids are just talentless. Without power, how can they protect the house? The rumors in the Empire were right. That's why our branch has to shoulder the load, right?" Heinkel ignored the gossip and told Klein, "It's fine. There are many paths besides wielding a sword." He took all those meaningless words to heart and brooded. "I don't care for the insults aimed at me, but Burkle still has you." Klein couldn't help recalling the hallmark line of the one who wronged him in his past life. "Do it for the children's future." A furious rage made him clench his hand in anger. Klein hissed in his mind, "The Lanerant house is on the brink of ruin. You sacrificed your life for people like this." A few minutes later, Deline turned to bid him farewell before leaving with his father. "See you, Klein." As they disappeared down the corridor, Dalton quickly sneered to the crowd. "What's this? A Lanerant young master who doesn't even know how to use a sword, and acts all high and mighty for being main line. Truly a family disgrace." Klein was mocked before everyone, but merely thought to himself, "Dalton, come well, your branch stock too," then calmly shot back. "So I guess secretly hitting on the girls after the dance is your proudest achievement." One remark quickly made the space even noisier as Dalton and Klein barked back like dogs at passers-by. "How did you even hear that?" "I thought bribing people would stop the rumors. Are you naive or just plain stupid?" "What?" When Dalton lunged to hit Klein, he casually leaned aside, causing his opponent to trip. "Where did you hear those ridiculous stories?" He fell, rolling across the floor. Klein slowly left the suffocating corridor. "So you got beaten by Deline and now want to take it out on me?" But was pulled back by Dalton's filthy swearing, "That dog. You're nothing but a named brat who doesn't even know who his mother is." Klein quickly flashed an appalling aura and growled, "What did you just say?" It sounded like he just said that. The image surprised Dalton so much he froze. The opponent's pitiful stance made Klein silently sneer. "This has nothing to do with my mother, someone I've never even seen. It's just blatant contempt for the main line born from your shabby pride. How did things get this bad? Why has the clan of the hero who defeated me fallen into this state?" After escorting Heinkel away, Dunkel turned back to deal with the thorny issue in the corridor. "That's enough, Mr. Dalton. I won't allow you any more rude actions." The remark left Dalton embarrassed. As he ground his teeth in anger, he turned and left muttering nonstop, "Be grateful you have a knight to hide behind, you coward." Dunkel watched Dalton storm off at the crowd. "What are you looking at?" His hand suddenly tightened on the sword hilt unconsciously. That image immediately caught Klein's eye. After thinking something over, he slowly asked, "Dunkel, do you have a spare sword here?" After a long pause, the two of them stepped out into the dark garden. Dunkel respectfully handed the sword to Klein with both hands. "Here you go, young master. But why do you need a sword this late anyway?" As Klein swung the sword and wondered, "Let's see, Deline swung like this earlier, didn't he?" Dunkel couldn't hide his puzzlement and asked, "By that do you mean the shooting star blade move?" With Klein's confirmation, "Yes, I need to check something." "You go on ahead." Dunkel quickly assumed a stance and bowed before Klein. "Yes, sir, be careful," though he still had many lingering thoughts. Perhaps he feels a little nostalgic about swordplay. Before leaving, he couldn't help glancing back at Klein for a moment. But it was too late. Young Master's body had no mana at all. Someone who can't use mana can never become a knight. Moreover, what we saw earlier was the shooting star blade, a technique invented by the Duke himself. Even if you precisely imitate the sword's path, performing it is impossible. Meanwhile, Klein slowly closed his eyes, took a deep breath to focus his mind, and everything became clear. What I witnessed earlier, the footwork at the moment of the stomp, Klein quickly merged himself with Deline's transcendent moment. At that time, the curve of the blade, and even the way the mana flowed. Thanks to that, he could channel the energy in his mind into that big sword. Klein's wide eyes made a soft cracking sound as the power surged out continuously. Everything developed so quickly that Dunkel, who was leaving, had to stop in his tracks. He turned around in panic to look back at this radiant glow. A strange image struck Dunkel's eyes, making him jolt. Could it be? As Klein gently swung the sword down to the ground, a faint light flashed at the corner of his eye. It turned out the force emanating from the blade had split the large rock before them. The miracle left Dunkel stunned for a long moment. As he scrambled toward Klein in confusion, stammering, "Young master." Klein, meanwhile, felt his heart race with excitement. "What the hell is this? Did I actually pull it off?" Aelin's face went pale as a sheet, his small mouth gaping. "What the?" Garrison piped in, adding his own disbelief. "This is." He stared at Klein's wet hair, and suddenly sounded thrilled, unbelievable. A moment later, Garrison boasted to Aelin, "Look, he can now hold his breath underwater for over a minute." Aelin gamely chimed in, "Oh, really? Our young master is a proper fish." Garrison, pleased, suggested something bolder. "Weird, huh? Should we just do the purification ceremony in the fish tank next time?" At that, Klein exploded. "Fish tank my foot. Why's this taking so long today? Who knows?" Garrison nonchalantly confirmed, "Is it done?" You shouted in a rage. "Done what, damn it?" Seeing a bit of smoke, he hurriedly explained. It's just that today I sensed a faint, ominous aura coming from your room. Klein trembled, hissed each word with hatred. An ominous aura. You dare joke with me over that? Aelin, oblivious to the deadly vibe, cheerfully rushed to help. Young Master, your bath towel. At that moment a voice interrupted. Young Master Klein. It was Dunkel who entered holding a thin envelope. Lord Dalton has just sent you an invitation letter. Klein, casually drying his hair, blinked and asked, Who? Dunkel patiently clarified. Dalton, the one who sparred with Lord Deline the other day. He says he wants to apologize for the unpleasantness that happened at the training ground. Unpleasant memories flooded Klein's mind and made him furious. That bastard can apologize. But in the end, he still patiently read through the cramped writing in the envelope. While Aelin skated across the floor polishing it, Klein's mind sank into suspicion. A hunting contest. He attacked me at the training ground and now invites me out. How strange. Surely he's just using this as an excuse to lure me outside. Dunkel, seeing him silent, probed, Are you going to join? Klein replied indifferently, no reason to refuse. His eyes flicked to the sword propped in the corner as he hummed with meaning. Besides, I'm holding an ace up my sleeve. Clearly Klein already had a plan in mind. He'd rehearsed Deline's sword moves from the other day over and over in his head. And then he realized one thing. Any technique I see just once, I can mimic perfectly, though I don't quite know why. Dunkel, standing beside him, was left speechless by that ambiguous remark. But after a few seconds' silence, he bowed and accepted the order out of reflex. Understood, I'll prepare the carriage at once. Garrison, who had somehow sidled up, interjected, A hunting contest? Sounds fun, bold as ever he offered. How about I come along for kicks? Klein, ignoring the two spectators bouncing around, snapped back. What the hell are you talking about? Who asked you to tag along, planning another crazy stunt? Nevertheless, Garrison only needed one sentence to shut him down. I told you so. His tone suddenly turned serious. For some reason I've felt all day like something's off. Whatever the discussion's outcome, the carriage will depart on time. Aelin, usually lively, acted up as soon as he got on the carriage, going limp and flopping across Garrison's lap. Itching to move, Klein tossed a pillow over and commanded, I told you not to follow. Here, use my pillow. After doing everything but true to his spoilt nature, he still turned to the window and mumbled, The western forest terrain is rough. Anyone going for the first time would be worn out. Rest a bit and you'll feel better. Garrison, moved to tears, suddenly poured out a sentimental speech. Our young master has really grown up, so caring. Klein found the syrupy act spine-chilling and hurriedly denied it. No, give that to Aelin. Do you think I'm mad? After the outburst, he once again let his mind drift to the scenery outside. The green forest before him set his thoughts soaring. After all, this place has changed so much. Even past images rushed back. When I was here before, there was only snow and corpses everywhere. Who would have thought the eternal ice belt would be so green after 200 years? Thinking that, Klein's gaze suddenly sharpened. The face of a long-time enemy flashed into his mind, making him grit his teeth. So it's that Burkle. Suddenly Dunkel's voice at the door pulled him back to reality. Young Master Klein. With a glance and a word he signaled, We've arrived. The Comwell family estate. Klein raised his head, taking in the luxury and thinking to himself. So this is where Dalton lives. His mind soured even more. A manor more splendid than Lainrant's main house of one of the three great dukes. It's just a hunting contest for the kids. Seems this family has so much money they throw it at anything like this. At that moment a loud shout caught his attention. Klein. Dalton, leading his pack of dogs, sneered. What are you staring at so intently? He didn't wait for Klein to answer and brazenly blurted out. High ceilings, thick walls, solid construction, huh? Thanks to the money we skimmed off your main line. But you've been locked in the convent for 7 years. So you probably don't know how the world works, right? Though the chatter buzzed in his ears, Klein's attention fixed on the dogs. Those hounds looked skin and bone, and he funneled his disgust into a sarcastic jibe. Since when did a hunting contest turn into a gossip session? Dalton, far from offended, curled a lip and shot back, impatient brat. I already prepared everything because I knew you'd say that. Then he suddenly loosened the leashes. Watch closely. The hungry pack, unleashed, thundered forward at Dalton's shout. Begin. Then with a tone of glee, he slowly explained. I've scattered bait all over the mid-mountain area. A hungry dog's sense of smell is 100,000 times a human's. As he jabbered, Dalton busied his hands drawing a longbow, while the beasts went mad for the scent and charged to find food. One of the dogs suddenly glared, having sniffed the scent of death, but they were all helpless as a volley of arrows pierced their bodies. Dalton stood with hands on hips and laughed in satisfaction. See? A brilliantly successful. Just then Aelin shuffled over and mumbled sleepily. Dalton immediately shifted his attention to her. It's you, isn't it? The servant Klein always drags a... He paused, then bared his teeth threateningly. I don't get what a brat like you could possibly do to be kept around. Come here, I'll give you another job. But before Aelin could change expression, a hand clamped down on Dalton's pig-like hook. The man turned annoyed, yelling, "What the hell is this?" While Klein, equally irritable, snapped, "Let go immediately." He cast a sharp sidelong glance over the man and added, "Before I break it." Dalton strained with all his might to wrench free from Klein's grip. Flushed with shame, he shoved straight at him and protested, "Don't put on an act." Dalton strode to his horse and smoothly vaulted up. Then he grinned toward his thorn in the side and signaled, "Come with me, Klein." Without hesitation, Klein hopped onto the adjacent horse and said, "You heard him. I'll be right back. Stay here with Aelin." Absolutely no following, Dunkel blurted out in alarm, "It's dangerous to go alone." Just as he suggested it, a talisman cut him off. "Let me come along with." Seeing it, Dunkel changed tone at once. A one-time magic message scroll. Turns out the message scroll is a disposable magic paper for sending signals. It works without mana. Once torn, the linking seal reacts and sends the signal. Klein leaned close and murmured in his ear while still glancing at Garrison, "That priest tailing me all the way here is suspicious. If he suddenly disappears, something's up." Dunkel lowered his voice too and asked, "Anything wrong?" Klein immediately raised his palm in command. "Yes, if he vanishes, tear this scroll at once. The seal on it will appear on my palm, so I'll know to be on guard." Having said enough, he tossed in one more line and urged his horse forward. "I'm counting on you." Dunkel hadn't time to protest and could only call after the young master helplessly. Though silent, Garrison still took note of the two's suspicious behavior with narrowed eyes. The sky suddenly darkened, as if someone had thrown a black curtain over it. Klein tightened the reins and ran through his mind. He can't have gone far. Follow the forest path and we'll find him. Just thinking that, his face went taut. Turns out Dalton, who'd been sitting with his sword ready, put on a provoking look. "You're here, Klein, a bit late, aren't you?" He dismounted leisurely and spat out impatiently, "What trick are you planning now?" But before he finished, Klein couldn't help exclaiming, "What the?" Before him lay corpses of dogs strewn everywhere. Dalton waved his sword with relish and said, "This is the most glorious finale of today's contest." He ground his teeth and hissed viciously, "And the final prey I'll finish off is you." Klein responded indifferently, "Kill me then." Dalton pointed his sword forward and sealed the threat, right on cue. "I'll chop your head off and toss it to old Delain to see." Let me tell him, Dalton's tone grew shriller. "The Lanerant clan is ridiculous, nothing but an empty shell with no power or real merit." He motioned for his lackeys to step forward and threatened, "You won't get a single chance to fight back." Already Dalton was daydreaming about houses and children. "After all, the dukedom title will soon belong to our branch anyway." The men with him followed suit, raising bows in rhythm. "Curse the fact you were born into such a stupid family." With Klein's face as cold as money and Dalton's rant unending. "That's right. By tomorrow the whole world will be gossiping about this. The famed sword clan of the north has crumbled. The young master of Lanerant slaughtered like bait for dogs." Some phrase must have hit a nerve, because Klein's eyes bulged wide. Burkel's old words suddenly echoed in his ear. Well, it's the future of the kids after all. The contrast between past and present made Klein snort with laughter. After a few failed attempts to hold it in, he threw his head back and laughed maniacally. That mad display unnerved Dalton a little. "You're laughing. Have you lost your mind?" He was about to add another line when the laughter stopped. "Otherwise." Then Klein replied in a grim tone, "Truly a brat who knows nothing of the world. All roar no sense." The slap across the face made Dalton furious enough to pop an eye out. Klein didn't stop, continuing his lecture. "This clan was built on my people's lives, and you dare insult and mock it." Waves of spiritual energy suddenly churned around him. Birds scattered in a panic, making Dalton stammer magic. "But you don't even have mana, do you?" Klein kindly enlightened the simpleton. "This isn't ordinary magic." He raised his hand to make it clearer and emphasized each word. "It is dark sorcery." The crowd around them was blown silly by the power, mouths open in confusion. "Hey, what's happening? What kind of freak is that?" At that moment, Dalton, unusually sharp, blurted out, "Wait, what did he say? Did he just mention dark sorcery?" Klein confirmed the man's guess with an incantation. "I call the ancient wicked souls buried beneath time. I will wake you and bring you back into the light. From this moment I command you." Klein swept his arm and shouted an order. "Devour them, swallow them up." Each word from his mouth was thick with intent. "Hurry and devour them all." Dalton, horrified, gaped and cried out, "This can't be, surely it isn't." The name Archimand slipped from his lips with a terror born of ancient days. And at that moment, Klein's summoning completed until the vengeful souls were utterly spent. Unfazed, he unleashed death upon the foolish crowd opposite. Consume them whole and leave nothing behind. A thought flashed through his mind as a blazing red light winked in the pitch-black space. Klein thought he'd forgot. Visions of countless skulls piled atop one another appeared. making the air thick with eerie vibes. 200 long years had passed as Klein walked along a road, flowing with the skulls of the unlucky fallen. His hair simultaneously shifted from black to silver-white, yet he could still feel desperate hands reaching out of the mire, grasping for a sliver of hope. Layer upon layer in the dark, the calls of the dead turned toward him. Yes, the resonance, the ripples, the afterimages, the memories. At that moment, Klein brought his hand toward the black hand, that nostalgic feeling, and without hesitation he crushed it. Dalton, seeing the scene, gaped and screamed, "Impossible could you be?" Klein, his face shadowed, reached out. Around him swarmed countless monsters with murderous eyes. Dalton's scream echoed through the space, Archiman. With a crooked smile and a glare he said, "Indeed, I was once called by that name." A gloomy sky appeared, and sorrowful sounds drifted on and on. One of the three men wiped sweat and stammered, "Archiman, isn't that just a rumor? Moreover, what is that thing?" Klein frowned coldly and stared ahead. At the same time, a skull slightly opened its jaw, and white smoke drifted out. Dalton and the others who witnessed it went blank. They all sneered, pointed, and laughed loudly. "What the hell is that? Look at those dry skeletons. Acting all dangerous, and it turns out to be this rubbish." Klein's tone dropped when he heard that. Rubbish. Dalton curled his lip in contempt. "Yes, rubbish. I've smashed hundreds of skeletons like these on missions." The man beside him raised an eyebrow and asked, "Why do they look strange, though? Are those black things bones?" He casually suggested, "Whatever. Later everyone take a bone home as a souvenir." The others laughed with delight. "Sounds good." Then he frowned and ordered, "First deal with the blockers." The man next to him stuck out his tongue and licked his sharp blade. Dalton's stern voice rang out, "The rest, clear the way," and a few obeyed, raising arrows toward the front. The target was right there. He barked, "Ranged unit load." The crossbowman squinted and aimed his sharp bolt straight at the target. Then Dalton shouted, "Fire," and at his command, countless arrows were released and flew forward. The arrow rain rushed straight toward Klein's position and the horde of skeletons. But Klein didn't react. He merely bowed his head. Then he looked up, his green pupils narrowing with an icy glint. The sound of countless arrows striking the ground echoed through the space. Dalton across from him put hands on hips and laughed. Poor Klein. He's probably a bloody mess by now. But suddenly, his eyes widened as if he'd seen a demon. Only a few arrows embedded into the black bodies. A grim wind whistled past. The skulls with arrows in them stared forward with glowing eyes. Klein stood behind them, squinting at the men. Then he curled a contemptuous smile. 100 years is a long time. I can't believe nobody recognized these skeletons. They broke out in cold sweat, terrified at the bizarre sight that wasn't there a moment ago. He raised an eyebrow coldly and looked down. "If these were ordinary skeletons, I'd agree with you." The men cursed angrily. "What the hell, damn it." Klein then slightly arched an eyebrow and revealed that my skeletons are very different. At once a thought surfaced. "Look closely," Burkle Klein's voice echoed. "Defensive formation number 1, disband." Then he told himself inwardly, "The future of the North you protected by killing me, those who mocked and insulted it." He curled the corner of his mouth and ordered in a low voice, "Entire force, prepare to attack." A confident thought arose. "Let's see how they fare crushed beneath my hand," and Klein thrust his hand forward, clenching it into an advancing fist. Immediately, the horde of skeletons surged forward fiercely, and they emitted horribly eerie cries. Dalton couldn't hide the horror on his face. "What the hell?" Then he shouted in alarm, "Dry bones can run." And that mass of skeletons charged straight at the men over here. He drew his sword at once and barked orders, "Don't panic. Hold the line against these damned skeletons." One of them was impaled by a sharp weapon wielded by a skeleton, blood gushing from his mouth and wound. The scene was pure chaos. Dalton's formation had been broken by the horde. Screams echoed through the... Seeing his comrades' blood spurting nonstop, he covered his face and cursed, "Damn it." Dalton roared, "What are you doing? Hold the line," while Klein coldly ordered, "Crossbow Squad 2, encircle them. Lock targets immediately." Shadows appeared directly above them, preparing crossbows to fire bolts. The image of the skeletons with weapons in hand appeared. Klein's command rang out, ready to fire. They broke out in a sweat at the sight. "Ranged attack, everyone run." And Klein merely lifted his eyes and said in a low voice, "Attack." At Klein's command, the skeletons released countless razor-sharp arrows straight ahead. Those below fled in a panic like a smashed beehive, while the arrows streaked straight toward them. The men who took the arrow storm screamed out in frantic, pitiful wails. The melee skeletons below also held an overwhelming advantage against Dalton's men. Watching this, he ground his teeth. How ridiculous. These aren't the skeletons I know. At this rate, we'll be wiped out soon. Dalton frowned and loudly suggested, "Put down the crossbows, stop loading bolts, switch to melee." Those around probably lacked the strength to comply, yet he still glared and shouted, "Are you listening to me?" Dalton swung his weapon back with force. "You damned undead." Then he slashed straight at a skeleton's neck. Its head toppled to the ground. Dalton grinned with obvious satisfaction. It's working just as I thought, aim for the head. At that moment, the headless skeleton swung its blade sharply. He sensed the danger and immediately ducked to avoid it. Sweating profusely, Dalton gritted his teeth and muttered, "What the hell, I'm sure I cut its head off." At the same time, Klein said coldly, "If you cut the head off, they shouldn't be able to rise. That's what most people think." A knowing smile on his lips, he added with some contempt, "But I already told you. My skeletons are very different." The head the skeleton just lost gently reached out and picked itself up. The skull was gradually rejoining the skeleton's neck. "This is the main reason I can sweep across continents." Dalton fearfully wondered, "It can reattach its own head. A spirit summoned by mana isn't so easily killed." They all obeyed orders and moved with tactical precision. The head-poking fellow snarled and cursed through gritted teeth. "Damn it. What the hell are these things anyway?" Then he shouted, "Why do they keep reviving like this?" Klein smiled to himself. "With this body, 11 is my maximum limit." Then he said, "Well then, shall we continue?" At those words, their faces couldn't hide sheer terror. Only ear-splitting screams echoed through the quiet night. Cut to the fountain. A chuckle of glee rang out. Aelin chewed a pastry with wide eyes in surprise. "Really? The young master actually did that?" Garrison beside her smiled softly, "Of course. It goes back to when he was at the monastery." She couldn't hide her excitement. "It's hilarious just to imagine," while the man beside her watched in silence. Then Garrison grinned. "You really like him, don't you, Aelin?" Aelin, still chewing, replied, "Obviously. The young master is absolutely wonderful." At that moment, a desperate voice cried out, "Stop, please." She commented softly, "He's kind," while a drop of terror rolled down a man's cheek. Aelin exclaimed sweetly and cheerfully, and then a skeleton mercilessly slashed down the back of that man. Blood spat everywhere, yet she happily said, "He even shared biscuits with me." Aelin declared with a face full of joy that he's the warmest person alive. Klein, expressionless, glanced at the red blood gushing from his enemy. The scene of Dalton's men struggling with the horde played out, loud wails rising. The man over here was also struggling against those skeletons. Dalton, unable to contain his rage, swung his sword and swore. But no matter how he hacked, they quickly recovered again. Dalton glared and gritted his teeth. "These damned undead bastards. At least I must stop them from regenerating." As if realizing something, he stared straight at Klein and affirmed in his mind, "That's him. If we can take him down." Finishing that thought, Dalton moved nimbly with all his strength through the skeletons. With sword in hand, he aimed a strike directly at the boy's position. Next, Dalton screamed madly, "Enough with the faking deaths. Undead or not, if you're dead, you're dead." The keen blade was about to fall on Klein's head. He not only showed no fear, but slowly opened his eyes, purple light shining from his pupils. Then countless beams of energy appeared. Klein opened his eyes wide and thought to himself, "I can see. With the power of this eye, I can replicate a skill just by seeing it once." He summoned a vast power and swung his arm forcefully behind him. Dalton gaped in horror at the sight. Is that Dellen's technique, the Lainrant family's secret art? Klein, light as a feather, swung his sword in an attack using a shooting star blade technique. When he saw his body sliced in two, he was stunned, as if he still didn't grasp what had happened. At the same time, Klein said in a low voice, "Don't expect a peaceful death, Dalton Comwell." With purple glowing pupils, he raised an eyebrow and declared, "The judgment begins now." The sky suddenly took on an ashen hue. Black clouds rolled in, weighing the air down. Staring at the carnage he'd wrought, Klein softly agreed, "You're right, Dalton." Fragments of memory flooded his mind. "If you kill the caster, all a summoner's creations lose their power. I couldn't overcome that weakness and suffered defeat." His body suddenly erupted with Archimonde's power, the summoner manipulating Ma. Unexpectedly, the power protecting Klein turned out to be the Lainrant family's ability. Burkle's face seemed carved into his subconscious, so vivid he couldn't forget it. But above all, it was the enemy's blood that made him even stronger. Klein could only sigh softly. Now reborn in this body, I can't deny it anymore. A bad premonition flared in Dalton. "What?" He panicked to the point of stammering, "What do you mean?" In less than a few seconds, his eyes rolled white, having reached their limit of endurance. The moment the opponent completely collapsed and fell into Klein's sight, "Stare up and see, Burkle." He clenched his teeth and vowed silently, "This dying house, I'll resurrect it with my own hands." After a long while, Dalton's eyes finally opened with difficulty. "Where is this? It's too dark, I can't see a thing." He checked his condition suspiciously. Along with this feeling, not only was his whole body bound tightly by ropes, his ankles were shackled like a trapped beast. The atmosphere was so cold, made the large man shiver unconsciously. Dalton kept struggling to break free from the restraint. "What is this?" Suddenly a familiar voice rang out in the silence. "You're awake," Klein said coldly by way of introduction. "This is where souls arrive after leaving the world you once lived in, the underworld I created." Dalton seemed unable to believe his ears, Archimonde's underworld. Yet Klein's calm reply met that shocked face. Yes, Klein slowly recounted the crimes he had committed in life. You, Dalton, starved and tortured the dogs, those cherished creatures you cruelly tormented. Not only did you feel no remorse, but you treated it as entertainment and regularly abused them under the guise of hunting. The vivid memories provoked Klein's fury. I still remember the glee on your face back then. Dalton's pride instantly urged him to shout back, hey, if you're cursing at me, at least make it sound believable, and let me outright this instant. A horrifying thought suddenly flashed through his mind. Wait a moment. Shattered memories slowly returned as a reminder. Clearly, my body was cut in two by Klein's sword. Dalton's face went deathly pale, no life left in it. How am I completely intact now? Klein, as if hearing his thoughts, answered, You're dead, Dalton. I'm merely returning your karmic debt from life, for that is the law of this He could only try to suppress rising anger. No way, Archimand or underworld nonsense. Stop talking rubbish and let me out right now. But Klein remained calm and replied, Whether you believe it or not doesn't matter. What's important is this. Klein's voice grew darker than ever. It's time for you to pay for your sins. Dalton's whole body tensed at his resolute declaration. No sooner had he spoken than ferocious beasts lunged forward, as if to devour their prey. Listen closely. Each line Klein spoke tightened the battle. The screams of the lives you stole. He ground out each word, emphasizing and making it clear, this place is the hell you created. Fear squeezed Dalton so tight, he could only beg like a madman. His eyes went completely white, as if he'd just seen his final nightmare. At last he reached his limit and surrendered. Dalton's body lay motionless in the vast space, so solitary it evoked an odd sympathy. Klein stood frozen, watching the pitiful sight before him. His gaze was deep, as if holding 1,000 sorrows. Suddenly a flurry of noises behind him made him start and snap awake. Klein calmly turned and activated his ability. Right, you did as I asked. I should repay you then, a reward for helping me. A fierce power erupted in midair. I will break the binding curse and grant you freedom. In an instant, the stiff body completely dissolved, as if it had never existed. The scene before him plunged Klein once more into heavy thoughts. His lips trembled, then tightened, as if forcing back the words he wanted to say. 1,000 questions rose in his mind. True death is when bones shatter and vanish, so why was I brought back, and to what end? Suddenly a low voice cut through the quiet. Unexpected that you know summoning magic. How surprising, young Master Klein. He immediately went on alert. He saw everything. But Klein kept his composure and asked coldly, Who are you? The mage smiled slyly without fear. You don't need to know. Then boldly unleashed his challenging energy. Besides, you won't get the chance to find out anyway. His power slowly flowed into the withered body lying on the ground. The man's eyes suddenly opened wide, as if pulled back from death's door. The corpses around quickly rallied into a solid army. Klein's face immediately darkened as he realized the problem. It's a resurrection art that controls the dead. His mood wavered at the unexpected news. He's a summoner, while the mage wore a smug expression. Dalton may have failed, but these corpses will be useful. His laughter echoed through the woods, as if showing off his extraordinary power. Meanwhile, outside, Aelin kept drawing attention. Sir Dunkel, you should come hear this too. The young master's childhood is hilarious. But Dunkel's mind boiled like a cauldron. I'll listen later. He nervously rubbed the paper in his hand. The magic signal scroll. Why would the young master carry an emergency-only item? Dark thoughts kept creeping in. 3 hours had passed since the young master and Dalton entered the woods with no word. I have a bad feeling about this. Finally, he decided to take a chance. Can't sit idly by, I must go find him, causing the subordinates to panic. Wait, Sir Dunkel. They kept offering reasons to dissuade him. It'll be troublesome if you leave now, the hunt is still on. You should stay a bit longer. Dunkel frowned slightly at the rash objections of the man before him. He carefully scrutinized the man from head to toe. The Comwell crest. Are they Dalton's guards? He quickly spotted the play's flaw. Of course, they had a shady scheme. Dunkel warned sternly, I am the captain of the Night Order under the Lainrent family and the young master's bodyguard. If you persist in blocking us, I will show no mercy. His gaze carried a clear murderous threat. Understood. They heard that and didn't dare move an inch, sensing the situation was tense. Aelin cautiously probed, Sir Knight, is something wrong? Dunkel replied gravely with urgent news. Listen carefully, Miss Aelin. The young master has been gone longer than expected, so I'm preparing to go look for him. Then he didn't forget to delegate duties. So, Miss Aelin, please return to the manor with that priest first. Aelin, puzzled, responded, but the priest already left. Dunkel was struck like a thunderbolt. What, he left without a word? When? While she kept her innocent tone, he looked extremely serious, though. She tried to recount every important detail. He said my bad feeling was right. Dunkel shivered. That damned priest following me here was suspicious. Right, if that man disappears, tear up the magic scroll at once. He couldn't help blurting affectionate words, before quickly mounting his horse. Tormenting thoughts gnawed at him. It really wasn't a coincidence. The horse hooves hammered away and vanished into the mist. Surely something happened to the young master. Meanwhile, Klein was still trying to hold his ground in the brutal scene. He calmly calculated each move. His mana was drained after the previous fight, so he couldn't use summoning magic now. The howls and roars kept taunting his ears as he stepped forward to respond. Klein could only helplessly curse his unlucky fate. At this rate, he won't hold out long. The mage, seeing this, pressed his advantage. He arrogantly ordered his vast army, "Kill young Master Klein for me." Klein couldn't help smiling at the simple-mindedness of the man before him. Resurrection art? You think you can kill me just because we both use summoning magic? No sooner had he spoken than the moon sigil flashed on the back of Klein's hand. The ghouls, seeing the feast on display, pounced like starving tigers. Yet Klein still smiled nonchalantly as if certain of victory. "Your number's up, you bastard." The mage's face went pale at the sudden chaos. What the? A violent beam of light suddenly shot through the air like a rocket. Garrison, somehow appearing in time, heroically came to the rescue. He smiled faintly and invoked his familiar spell. "O sacred light." The whole space seemed to tremble before his terrifying power. "Grant rest to the departed." Garrison slowly turned and left a message. "Rest assured, young Master Klein." The uninvited guest's arrival left the mage utterly stunned. "Who are you?" His rugged face now seemed wrapped in the proud aura of the Holy Order's representative. He didn't hesitate to accept the challenge. "Since I'm here, Garrison will take the field. It is said the enforcers are 3 humanoid weapons who obey the Pope with absolute loyalty. They are the Church's strongest assets, the only ones capable of wielding the holy relics left by Saint Gao. Rumor has it each of them holds power comparable to a fortress." The mage shuddered at the horrific sight before him. He poured all his strength into answering each of Garrison's storm-like blows. And one of those supreme figures now loomed before him. "Who are you?" Even Klein felt intimidated by the one who prided himself on unmatched physical might. Garrison offered a bright, reassuring smile. "You can relax now, young Master Klein. Stand firm before me, for I am here." Yet the ghouls showed no sign of stopping their assault on the prey. They couldn't sense the danger lurking around, and rashly charged to declare battle. Each face wore a look of hatred, as if to vent every ounce of fury. In less than a few seconds, that face was utterly distorted by Garrison's lightning-fast punch. He gently unleashed brutal strikes, till the sinful ones, his eyes suddenly aflame with pride, urged, "Beg and pray." His words came easily yet contrasted sharply with his actions. "I will grant you baptism by fire." The remaining ghouls grew even more ferocious at Garrison's words and vowed to cleanse your sins. His foot slammed into the ground like an oath, affirming his extraordinary power. Then he sprang up into the air and delivered finishing blows. In a flash, he mowed down the entire ghoul horde. "This is mercy." Garrison kept his calm expression amid the chaos. "This is judgment." Witnessing the magnificent scene left the mage stunned. Insane, why is the Church's enforcer here, and what the hell? He could hardly believe what his eyes saw. What is that power? In panic, he turned to flee. Damn it, this wasn't part of the deal. His feet sprang and leapt as if a single second's delay meant death. It was absurd. Indeed, the mage's entire body was abruptly hoisted aloft into the mystic air. Garrison gripped the man's head and demanded, "Where do you think you're going?" Without giving him a chance to explain, he harshly punished the insolent man. The mage screamed in horror, "I can't breathe," but Garrison ignored him. "Your prayers are not yet finished, so be grateful." Garrison emphasized each word. "This judgment has been decreed upon you." As soon as he finished, he crushed the man's thinking organ in the name of the light. His trophy quickly fell towards Klein, as if expecting praise. The severed head twitched and rolled across the ground, stopping before his feet, making the scene even more macabre. Klein could only swallow at the other's exuberant attitude. Young Master Klein. He couldn't help looking at the man before him with admiration. The man had taken only a single step forward. His face had gone a few shades paler, and yet just his presence, the pressure of his aura. He carefully observed the remaining traces. Over 20 corpses had been torn to pieces on the spot. Suddenly, the sky seemed to darken beneath Garrison's massive hand. He slowly placed his blood-smeared hand on Klein's shoulder to probe. "I sensed traces of summoning magic and rushed here at once." Saying that, he revealed a sly smile. But strangely, he showed no restraint as he gripped the younger man's shoulder and warned. "The energy I felt, the eyes that had been gentle moments ago, were now overlaid with a thick, murderous intent, as if they didn't belong there." Klein's ashen face worsened under the overwhelming force. This bastard. He could fully sense how dangerous this was. The man would kill him on the spot if he hesitated. Just then a familiar voice suddenly came from the air. "Young Master Klein." Dunkel threw himself toward his master with all his might to help. "Are you all right?" Klein was utterly astonished to see the familiar figure, Dunkel. He tried to hold onto the last shards of his composure. Summoning with this body seemed beyond him. No reply came, leaving Dunkel increasingly worried. Young master. He ignored the danger and rushed closer to check the man's condition. The wounds on his body hit him at once. What happened? Why are you covered in blood? Klein could only helplessly comfort him. Did you hear me? Stop screaming, help me, my legs gave out. Dunkel suddenly remembered something important and asked, where's young Master Dalton? But the answer to his question was coldly blunt. I killed him. Klein felt no remorse for his decisive action. He was going to kill me first. Upon hearing the news, Count Cromwell couldn't help slamming his fist on the table. What is the meaning of this? He shouted in shock. Are you saying Dalton tried to assassinate young Master Klein? Showing no restraint, he erupted in fury and berated in court. My son is a knight, a man of honor and loyalty. His death is already tragic enough, and now you accuse him of assassination. Count Cromwell, losing his temper, kept demanding answers. Shouldn't we focus on finding the real culprit immediately? Meanwhile, Heinkel remained professional and replied, however, your count. He solemnly detailed the facts. Despite lengthy interrogation, Klein's testimony never changed even once, and there's one more thing. A warning flashed in his eyes. Records show 2 mercenaries were dispatched from your manor at the time the children vanished. It seems clear Dalton really intended mischief. The truth laid bare left Count Cromwell speechless, while inside he kept cursing those idiots. I told them not to leave any evidence, but he refused to accept defeat. Still, this was absurd. Dalton was skilled enough to officially join the Knights, yet young Master Klein has never even held a sword right. The crowd immediately buzzed. That's right, I saw him at the sword demonstration. Heinkel himself said young Master Klein has no mana, so how could he have killed Dalton? He breathed a small sigh of relief after steering public opinion. Well, Dalton failed, that's on him. But if they find out he tried to kill a direct heir, I'm finished too. Count Cromwell smiled faintly and made a risky decision. All right, I'll change tactics. He quickly poured oil on the flames. Think about what kind of person young Master Klein is. He laughed and shouted with smugness. He's the son of Grand Duchess Madame Claire, a woman surrounded by strange rumors until her death. Hasn't he claimed since childhood to be Archiman? Count Cromwell grew bolder and disrupted the trial. How can you believe such a man accuses my son of murder? Heinkel, watch your words, Count Cromwell. But he kept yelling as if victory were already assured. It's obvious young Master Klein lacks sword skill and hired men to kill Dalton. Now he's trying to pin it on Dalton. Disgusting, until a deep, booming voice cut him off. That's enough. Count Cromwell flinched all over when he recognized the familiar voice. Wait, that voice. He was utterly shocked by the enemy's appearance as young Master Klein slowly entered the court to confront him. I've been listening this whole time, and you've been spouting a lot of nonsense. Klein quickly laid out the facts clearly. He hired mercenaries to kill me, and I simply killed him in self-defense when someone turned them into the undead. Father Garrison arrived and helped me. Count Cromwell, though frightened, stubbornly shouted back. Lies, making Klein barely suppress a laugh. Lies. The eyes that were pitch black suddenly glinted with red derision. But is the bit about me being Archiman true then? His contorted face immediately caught Klein's gaze. I once swore an oath. Klein kept reminding himself of his sole purpose. I will personally restore this family, the house rebuilt on my death. I won't let it be sullied by those maggots. Careful calculations kept surfacing in his mind. First, I'll deal with the bastards in the cadet branch who dared touch me. Suddenly, a clear voice rang out, breaking the tense court atmosphere. Sorry I'm late. Leia strode to the center with proud bearing. The captain of the Green Holy Merchant Knights had arrived. Klein was a little surprised by her appearance. She was at the sword demonstration too, so why is she here? The onlookers grew curious. Miss Leia, this has nothing to do with the Forvin family, right? Heinkel answered at once. I permitted her to be here. He calmly explained the reason. Dalton previously served under her knightly order. Each of his words was careful protection for an honored guest. So she has every right to attend this hearing. Leia glanced around at the situation unfolding. The sudden move startled Klein. Their eyes met, and she gently said, if you don't mind. Without hesitation, she proposed. I'd like to speak privately with young Master Klein. 1,000 questions popped into his head. Why me? Heinkel had no reason to refuse and nodded slightly. I'll allow it, but only for a moment. He didn't forget to warn. Go on, Klein, don't be gone too long. Klein's mood worsened with the complication. What a hassle, why are knights always like this? Suddenly he realized a truth. No, this is actually an opportunity. Only 3 reasons she'd call me out. He immediately switched to alert mode. Verify suspect or attest, calmly replying to Heinkel. Understood, father. Klein walked out while calculating each move. Whatever her reason, it didn't matter. There's a target now, and I don't plan to run. Confident thoughts kept surfacing until he left the room. Whether Forvin or anyone else, I'll use them to my advantage. Suddenly, Leia decisively locked him into a passive position. She carefully considered each word before making a bold decision. Then she boldly pressed Klein up against the wall. "Hey you," she asked seriously, "can I touch you?" The completely unexpected move drained color from Klein's face. "Are you serious? This girl is known as Leia. She is the eldest daughter of the Forvin house, one of the 3 great duchies on the continent rivaling Lainrant, a master of tradecraft and captain of the Green Holy Merchant Knights. The official record of Leia's skill reads as follows. The day she was surrounded by grotesque beastmen. A moment later, they all swung their axes at Leia at once. Yet deep in her eyes, there was no wavering, only a chill that was hard to put into words. Then a slash cut through, so fast the monsters didn't even have time to react. During that hunt in the western forest, while conducting a sweep to secure the civilians, Captain Leia single-handedly slew high-tier beastmen. They came in swarms like ants, yet couldn't nick her a single scratch. In that moment, only Leia herself truly understood how powerful she was. And now she was urging Klein with a touch of impatience. "What are you doing? Hurry and follow me." He immediately dropped his doubts and hurried after her. "Okay, I'm coming." However, before he finished the sentence, she snapped annoyedly, "And don't act so familiar. After all, we're not from the same household." The relationship between Klein and her was complicated. His aunt was the Duke's concubine, so Leia was his cousin, or so they'd told Klein. Watching Leia's back as she walked ahead, he thought differently. She's the Duke's legitimate daughter's child, so biologically we don't share a drop of blood, practically strangers. While he was mentally parsing their blood ties, she suddenly blurted something baffling. "From now on, this is just my personal curiosity." Klein wanted to ask more, but she abruptly pushed him back and asked, "You intend to?" Looking up, he found Leia's face inches from his, each word making him stiffen. "Can I touch you?" Klein was utterly bewildered and insisted on clarification. "What do you mean, touch me? Why all of a sudden?" But instead of answering directly, she grabbed his wrist and pulled it toward her. "Give me your hand first." Leia felt the palm carefully, soft and smooth, no scars or calluses like a baby's hand. Yet these odd actions already had Klein sweating. "Why is she touching my hand?" Leia paid no mind to his face of consternation and kept on her little inspection. Of course, some trained swordsmen have no calluses. Instead, certain areas harden more. She probed for those spots, under the index finger where one grips a hilt or the inside of the thumb. Tendons and bone don't lie. Klein still didn't quite grasp the situation. "So what?" After thoroughly checking his hand, Leia finally declared with certainty, "You've never used a sword, right?" That made her even more suspicious. You can tell by his hand, no signs of wielding a blade. Yet how did he defeat a full knight like Dalton and 2 mercenaries and survive? Could it be that you? For an instant, Klein vaguely recalled that bizarre scene, and Leia's words echoed in his head. Used to different power. Just remembering it was too much, and he abruptly shoved her away. Klein's face no longer showed earlier bewilderment. Instead, he snapped back at her. "I can't believe you'd say such nonsense. Are you trying to ask if I'm Archimand or something?" Silently, he raised his guard. This girl is dangerous. He focused intently on every nuance of her expression. This wasn't mere curiosity. Her gaze was probing for a reaction, not waiting for an answer. Silence would be taken as admission and hesitation as confirmation. So the easiest reply would be. Klein's eyes sharpened instantly, adopting a more confident air than his opponent. A half-smile curled on his lips, mocking. "So what?" At that moment, he sounded like one of those loudmouth kids at the market trying to look dangerous. "What if I were Archimand?" Leia couldn't help but burst out laughing with contempt at his smugness. "As if you're just a brat, you think you're Archimand." He froze, unable to process what she just said. A brat. His face only grew worse. His eyes widened in disbelief at what he'd heard. Though he'd heard every word, Klein tried to hypnotize himself. Wait, maybe she meant another word, not brat. Leia, as if ignoring his sullen look, calmly slapped him hard. "You don't want me to repeat myself, do you?" Giving Klein no chance to reply, she unleashed a rapid volley of barbs like sharp arrows. "You're far too scrawny to be Archimand. Your proportions are awful, your voice and stature, zero presence. In short, you're just a brat, a pretender." Klein was shaken to the core, wounded internally by the verbal assault. Damn, the blow landed deep. She only bolstered her rigid conclusion. "You're not Archimand nor a swordsman. If someone like you beat a knight." She apparently didn't trust him at all, "So I'll give you these lips." Time and again, Klein's brain overheated, struggling to digest the cascade of information he'd just received. In the end, his mind couldn't stay clear from the internal wound. Why would she do that? What was the point? His small brain strained to analyze the scene. A political move or bribery? Leia had no idea she'd left the kid questioning life itself. She simply turned and walked away as if nothing happened. "We're late, come inside." She stood above and gazed at the distant sky. Leia's eyes were odd. Impossible to read any emotion. He'll never be Archiman. As the two entered the interrogation area, someone announced to everyone that young Master Klein and Miss Leia were approaching. Before returning to his seat, Klein's head filled again with chaotic thoughts. "All right, I admit I was too complacent. I'm the troublesome second son locked by the Holy Order for 7 years. No wonder they don't believe I killed Dalton in self-defense." Count Cromwell broke into a sweat the moment he saw him return. Young Master Klein, the only one who kept his composure, was Heinkel. He didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. "May I ask what you two discussed?" Leia hesitated, about to speak, when she saw Klein silently draw the sword at his hip. Then suddenly he slammed it point first into the ground, producing a thunderous sound throughout the hall. Everyone present rose in alarm at once. Even Leia and Heinkel hadn't anticipated this. He brazenly pointed the sword at his opponent and named him outright, Count Cromwell, and in his heart Klein resolved, "I'll prove it myself." His look alone conveyed unshakable resolve. "Enough talk, settle this like men, the northern way." Facing everyone's gaze, Klein bluntly declared the duel. "Let's settle this with a decisive match." At that moment Count Cromwell couldn't remain seated. He jumped up with a start and shouted, "What did you say, a duel?" A duel here refers to an ancient northern trial method used when a verdict is hard to reach. There are no restrictions on weapons or skills, and the match's outcome decides the judgment. In short, fight it out and the winner gets what they want. Unlike Klein's zeal, Count Cromwell was somewhat fearful. A duel. This is too sudden? What? He wasn't patient enough to regain composure and immediately began calculating everything. "I'm sure there are many reasons, Count Cromwell." Klein recounted without flinching what Count Cromwell had done to him. "Even with proof that your son tried to kill me first, you still tried to pin it on me." He even remembered exactly what the man said that day, born of Grand Duchess Claire, who was surrounded by strange rumors in life. Didn't he always babble that he was Archiman as a child? Klein didn't even frown, staring straight at him as he added that in the process the man insulted both him and his mother. And of course only half of that was true. He bore the name Klein, but his true identity was Archiman, and he felt no special affection for this second-life mother of his. Even now Count Cromwell hadn't given up concealing the mountain of his mistakes. "Wait a moment, young master, about this matter." Klein, who already knew what he intended to say, cut him off. "Decide quickly, Count. Are you going to keep everyone waiting?" Those watching from the balcony were itching for excitement. The three clustered together to gawk, surprised someone still remembered the old tradition. "It's been a while since we've had a duel. I'm looking forward to it." Even Heinkel agreed. "If it's a tradition passed down from the first generation, we can't ignore it. I, the 7th Duke of Lainrant, guarantee the matter will be decided by the duel's result." Count Cromwell pricked up his ears and heard every word. With all presented evidence now invalidated, he suddenly froze. "Wait, if the evidence is nullified, that means..." Count Cromwell turned to Klein with a look full of petty schemes. "This is an opportunity." Yet outwardly he feigned concern. "Will you be all right? I've heard the young master has no mana, but I was planning to send another knight to fight in my place," he said with slick words. However, deep inside, Count Cromwell had no intention of leaving Klein a way out. "I'll have someone kill you, you blasted pretender." Klein's side wasn't to be toyed with either. He replied smugly, "It's fine, sit back and watch how I deal with Dalton." His inner thought wasn't very charitable either. Go to hell. Seeing Klein's arrogance, Count Cromwell refused to yield another second and immediately accepted the challenge. "Very well, I accept. The duel will take place in 4 days." However, few knew that from that moment Klein began crafting a perfect plan. "I'm not raising the stakes without reason. This is only the beginning." Using him as a stepping stone, Cromwell, "I'll show those wretched branch families who I really am. How I will completely reform this house." Time passed unknowingly until a voice from the castle suddenly sounded in astonishment. "Absolutely not." Delenn was utterly bewildered. "A duel? Are you crazy, Klein? Do you know what you're saying? You could die." "You talk so much I feel numb," Klein sighed wearily. I know already. How many times must I say it?" His tone remained oddly light as a feather. "Father permitted it, accept it." His brother couldn't believe what he was hearing. Father did what? Delenn was extremely worried for his younger brother sitting before him. "It's all right. The duel allows a representative. You can fight for him." "But Klein has decided, so what? How could a few words from you change his mind?" True enough, Klein immediately rejected his brother's offer outright. No need. He accepted the other's goodwill, but thought the plan unlikely to succeed. After all, there's one reason we're rulers of the North. No matter how much those branch bastards bark and riot, it's because we have Father, the strongest knight, and his heir. And you want to fight in my place? Wake up, brother. Klein seemed to have seen through their intentions long ago. Each word made him widen his eyes in astonishment. Doing that would only give them a lawful chance to kill Lainrant's heir. He also understood Dellen's feelings well. He must be furious at being powerless just because he's the heir. But this is necessary for you to change your reputation. For his own future, Klein must seize the opportunity before him. Dellen, I have no reason to let you take this. Seeing his little brother's determination, he couldn't help recalling old memories of when the boy was born. He was so overjoyed to have a baby brother that he ran straight over. That was the first time he'd ever seen that. Dellen looked at the tiny infant, eyes wide with innocent delight, an angel. He didn't care about blood ties. It's fine we have different mothers. He'd lost you to the Holy Order, waited 7 long years and struggled to get you back, so now you want a duel. Before Klein could finish wondering what Dellen would say, his brother's hand landed a bit too hard on his shoulder, leaving Klein looking dazed. You, the proud firstborn of Lainrant, are shedding tears in front of me. Listen to me carefully, Klein. Klein was startled. He's crying, but why? Dellen was about to say something heartfelt when Dunkel suddenly burst in and cut him off. Young Master Klein, seeing the situation was off, even a commander of the knights like him couldn't do much. Sorry to interrupt, but Count Cromwell has already chosen his representative. Hearing that the old man had found an opponent, Klein's curiosity flickered. Who is it? Dunkel's face suddenly grew grave. His name is Randall, a knight expelled from the Empire, once famed on the battlefield. Upon receiving the information about the opponent, the scene seemed to cut to some tavern somewhere. Dunkel's voice still echoed in his ear. The reason he was expelled was, mixed with the sound of liquor pouring into a glass. Most striking was a huge man sitting amid a room strewn with bodies. His heavy tone stopped there, an uncontrollable bloodlust. He seemed oblivious to his surroundings, drained his cup in one gulp, then finally gave Klein a look like one would give an ant one could wipe off the board at any time. Young Master of Lainrant, it's been a while since I've heard a brat scream. Hearing Randall's taunt, Klein felt nothing. No flicker of fear showed in the young mage's steadfast eyes. At that moment, someone approached Klein carrying a sword carefully wrapped in cloth. He handed it over and spoke in a serious tone. This is the sword you requested. I forged it exactly as you wanted, but be careful. The moment it strikes a monoconducting blade, it will shatter. Klein quietly took the sword and inspected it. After a moment, he answered without hesitation. Good, then let's set off right away. At the same time, excitement spread throughout the arena as people gathered, all talking about the same thing, that Klein had finally decided to appear in person. The air buzzed with curiosity and anticipation as countless eyes turned toward the field. The scene shifted to nobles seated high above the arena. Cromwell looked toward Klein's father and said with obvious surprise, I didn't expect you to personally come. Then turning slightly back to him with a fleeting smile, he continued, Are you truly okay with this? My champion is a knight from the Empire. He might be too much for your monolith son. It's not too late to send Lord Dellen instead, don't you think? However, Klein's father showed no reaction to those words. His expression remained calm and unshaken, as if he'd decided long ago. Meanwhile, Klein continued to step into the arena. His eyes swept around as thoughts ran through his head. Where is he anyway? His opponent still hasn't shown up. But in the next instant, a gigantic shadow suddenly loomed over him. A huge man with the build of a monster approached, his body like solid steel, muscles bulging under his clothes like a warrior forged for battle. Slowly, the man placed a heavy hand on Klein's head and looked down with a threatening smile before speaking. So, you're young Master Klein, are you? The narration then revealed the terrifying man's identity. None other than Cromwell's champion, Randall. He looked down at Klein with a long, wicked grin and jeered. You're much younger than I was told. Well then, those arms of yours are far too scrawny. His eyes narrowed dangerously as he leaned in closer. I wonder what sound you'll make when your neck snaps. The moment Klein grasped what was happening, he leapt back with astonishing speed, creating distance between them in a single motion. The sudden move made the audience gasp in astonishment, and whispers immediately spread through the arena. What was that? Did he just back away? In the stands, Cromwell looked to Heinkel again and said with relish, Do you see that, Duke? He acted like that before the duel even began. Can he really handle a fight against someone like Randall? Meanwhile, Randall let out a low chuckle before speaking again. Oh my, he already looks completely terrified. But Klein, staring at the man cautiously, was thinking something entirely different. No, damn it, that startled me. It reminded him of when that old priest grabbed his shoulder before. He stepped back without realizing it for a second. That bastard was useless to the very end. At that same moment, from high above the arena, Commander Leia was silently watching everything below. Her sharp eyes remained fixed on Klein, as the atmosphere grew heavier with tension. Just then one of her guards hurried to her and said anxiously, "Madam will be furious if she finds out about this. We should go back, Commander." Leia replied immediately without looking at him. "I don't care, that woman isn't my mother anyway." Then deep in her thoughts, another idea flashed. If he actually defeats that knight, I'll give him these lips. But even after thinking that, her gaze never left the arena below. "There are also things I need to confirm," she added quietly. Meanwhile, below in the arena, Klein stood there feeling the weight of everyone's attention on him. A blush of embarrassment flickered across his face as he thought, this is humiliating. Then trying to appear calm and composed, he awkwardly spoke while straightening up. "Ah, turns out my neck's been stiff lately." Klein straightened and said with clear annoyance, "So you'd better not touch my shoulder." But despite the warning, Randall slowly reached his hand forward again as if deliberately provoking him. The moment Klein saw that, his face twisted in disgust and he snapped back. "I told you not to touch me, you perverted bastard. Are your ears stuffed with muscles or what? Besides, that's precisely why the Empire kicked you out." For a short moment, the entire arena fell silent. Then Randall's face slowly split into a savage grin. "Excellent," he said in a deep voice. "The filthier your mouth is, the more you'll have to scream later." At the instant those words left his mouth, Randall lunged forward and unleashed a devastating punch at Klein, his giant fist tearing through the air with monstrous force, enough to crush a normal man instantly. However, at that exact moment, Klein calmly unbuttoned his coat, and in the next second, boom, Randall's fist slammed into the ground, causing a violent impact like an explosion that shattered the stone floor. Beneath him, dust and debris flew into the air as cracks spread across the arena floor. But Randall's eyes widened in surprise. The only thing left in his hand was Klein's coat. Klein himself had vanished from that spot before the blow could land. The crowd instantly erupted into chaos. The ground shattered. What kind of power was that just now? "Wait, look over there." Everyone quickly turned to the opposite side of the arena, where Klein could now be seen standing at a distance. With a short sword in his hand, his expression still tense as he stared at Randall cautiously. The bastard really has a terrible temper. Then, deep in his mind, Klein began to calmly analyze the situation. A direct clash would be very difficult, just as I expected. If I take even one hit from that giant body, I'll be blown away. I hate admitting that, but this isn't a situation where I can afford to be casual. Meanwhile, the spectators continued whispering anxiously among themselves as they witnessed the huge disparity in raw strength between the two fighters. He dodged that pretty well, but how could he possibly beat a monster like that? Another man nearby swallowed hard before saying skeptically, even a light scratch from that attack would crush his bones. Some in the crowd kept whispering that he's just walking himself to his death. Nearby, Klein's companion called his name, and at that moment he recalled what Klein had said earlier. He planned to take my place in the duel. That only gives them a legal excuse to kill the Lanrant heir. As those words rang in his mind, he thought silently, "You're right. The family's fate is threatened, so I can't just do whatever I want." However, before that thought could fully settle in his mind, the battle had already started on the other side of the arena. Randall suddenly lunged forward with terrifying speed, closing the distance between them in the blink of an eye. Klein immediately drew his sword and launched an attack, but Randall casually blocked the blade with nothing but his bare hand, the sheer force behind it shocking everyone watching. In the next instant, Randall struck back, forcing Klein to skid backward across the ground. But Randall didn't give him a second to recover. Moving with overwhelming speed, he appeared in front of Klein again and continued his relentless assault. Mocking him as he went, Randall sneered, "You think you can win by just dodging?" Klein was using every bit of strength he had just to parry the incoming blows, each hit feeling heavier than the last, driving him ever further back. Meanwhile, Randall continued to mercilessly taunt him. "Why don't you try using your summoning art? Aren't you the great Archiman?" The moment Randall looked straight into Klein's eyes, he noticed something strange. Klein was smiling, not a confident smile nor a pleased one, but a smile tinged with annoyance and suppressed rage. Deep inside, Klein clenched his thoughts and anger. "This is troublesome. Should I just use my summoning art and wipe them all out?" After witnessing that overwhelming pressure, even Randall instinctively took a step back in fear, sweat beginning to bead on his face as his body reacted before his mind could fully understand what he just felt. The confidence and arrogance he'd shown until now began to crack among the audience, confused voices immediately spreading. What did Randall dodge just now? No way, he's definitely holding back on the kid. But Randall knew that wasn't true. Inside his mind, he was struggling to understand what had just happened. What was that? There was definitely nothing there. Even though Klein hadn't done anything overt, Randall could sense a fierce, deathly aura emanating from within him, not something his eyes could see. Yet his instincts were screaming at him to stay away. That invisible pressure alone was enough to make fear crawl through his entire body. Seeing Randall suddenly back off, the man sitting above the arena clicked his tongue and shouted irritably, "What's going on? Why is Randall acting like that?" At that moment, Klein calmly stepped forward and announced clearly to everyone present, "Don't worry, I will not use anything like summoning art because I am a Lanrant. This is the place to prove oneself entirely by a sword." He paused briefly before continuing in a resolute tone. "Therefore, I will not use summoning art." The moment those words were spoken, astonishment spread throughout the arena. His father, his companion, and almost everyone watching from the stands looked at him in disbelief. No one expected him to say such a thing. Until now, many had eyed him with suspicion because of his summoning art. But hearing those words directly from Klein began to change the atmosphere entirely. Public opinion in the crowd slowly started to shift. Then, bit by bit, people began cheering for him. "Yes, this is how a duel should be. We're with you, we'll support you. See, that's not just bravado." The arena, once filled with doubt and mockery, was now being taken over by excitement and support, all because of Klein's firm declaration. Randall poured more mana into his blade, the energy around the sword growing keener and heavier as he prepared for another strike. Staring directly at Klein, he muttered confidently that the brat had no mana. The explanation that followed revealing why Imperial swordsmanship was feared across the Empire. The true power of Imperial swordsmanship lay in never holding back one's mana, by pushing every sense to their absolute limit: breath, muscles, the flow of blood and reflexes. A swordsman could unleash a single burst of explosive energy, capable of hunting down an opponent in an instant. Randall focused all his strength into a finishing blow, and lunged forward with astonishing speed. His entire focus was to end the fight with that one attack. But at that precise moment, Klein calmly dodged as he tracked Randall's movements. Klein murmured quietly, "We can see it. Your technique, mana capacity, even the curve of the blade, every tiny fragment of it." To Klein, the attacks of Randall began to look painfully clear. Like a damn fly, hearing that only fanned Randall's anger further. Once more, he focused every ounce of his strength into another strike, this time even stronger than before. The force behind it nearly doubled the previous blow. The moment the attack hit the ground, a massive explosion erupted across the arena. Dust and mist spread everywhere, swallowing the battlefield and obscuring everyone's view. The audience could barely see anything through the cloud created by the impact. Randall's eyes widened in disbelief. Did that kid really read every trajectory of his sword in that short time? Then suddenly, from behind him, Klein appeared, moving through the smoke without making a sound. Klein stepped directly into Randall's blind spot and readied his counterattack. With a body that size, his back was completely exposed. In the next instant, Klein's timing was perfect. The precision and smoothness of his technique were so astonishing that everyone watching was left utterly stunned. Even the seasoned warriors in the arena could hardly believe what they'd seen. Meanwhile, inside his mind, Randall was in complete chaos. "This makes no sense. This bastard, he has no mana, so how the hell?" Not far away, one of the soldiers standing beside Leia said skeptically, "Did you just see that, Captain?" At that moment, Leia was blushing slightly as she watched Klein's fight, clearly impressed by his overwhelming skill and confidence. "He's putting on a show." Then the scene cut to another place where a heavy silence filled the room. Amid it, a voice could be heard speaking calmly but with disappointment. "Normally, I would step in myself before anyone else could react." Another man quickly replied, "My Duke, that." But his words were cut off by the protagonist's father. "I know," he said in a deep voice, "I should not act on personal emotion. If I step forward now, the Lanrant family's prestige will only fall further," his expression darkening as he continued. "But the opponent is a knight from the Empire. Klein has absolutely no chance of winning." The other man looked puzzled after hearing this and asked carefully, "Then why did you allow the duel?" For a moment, the protagonist's father fell silent, as if carrying years of regret in his heart. Then finally he spoke. He stepped forward to protect the honor of his late mother, his voice heavy with guilt. "Even when he was wrongly labeled Archimand and locked in a convent, I could not save him." His fist slowly clenched. "So what right do I have to stop him now?" The atmosphere grew even heavier. Finally, he continued bitterly, "I could not protect anything. Not my child, not my family." Hearing those painful words, the other man immediately tried to reassure him. "You needn't worry, my Duke. The young master doesn't pick fights he can't win." Shortly after, the scene returned to the current battlefield. The duel was still underway. Yet even Klein's father could not hide the shock in his eyes after witnessing what was happening. At the same time, the narration began to explain the history and nature of the Lanrant family. The Lanrant family was known as the Northern Swordsman clan. To survive the merciless frozen lands of the north, they developed a sword style that minimized mana consumption. Every movement refined for efficiency, conserving strength and mana, so they could endure long battles across brutal icy fields. On the other hand, Imperial swordsmanship was entirely different. Imperial swordsmanship is predation. Imperial swordsmanship is a style built entirely around domination, overwhelming an opponent by releasing a massive amount of mana at once and crushing them before they can react. In contrast, Lanrant swordsmanship follows a completely different philosophy. It focuses on patience, precision, and striking only at the perfect opening while using the minimal amount of mana possible. That is the true essence of the Lanrant techniques. The Supreme Sword art achieves maximum effect with minimal mana. As awareness spread across the battlefield, Klein said calmly while facing Randall directly, "This is how I, someone without mana, can still use my family's techniques." His eyes remained steady despite the pressure pouring from his opponent. "It may lack power, but it's more than enough to beat a man like you." The moment those words hit him, Randall's face contorted with rage, veins bulging across his face as he glared at Klein. Angrily, that brat. At the same time, an overwhelming force suddenly began to gather through Randall's body, mana surging fiercely around him, growing denser and heavier by the second. Clearly, he was preparing to unleash every ounce of mana he possessed in a single devastating strike. From above, the man watching the duel immediately noticed the change. His eyes widened as he thought to himself, "There it is, Randall's secret technique." A burst of mana instantly locked the opponent's movements, and the pressure on the battlefield kept rising. The air felt heavier as Randall's power climbed higher and higher. Then with a furious roar, Randall shouted, "Don't make me laugh, bastard, I am the one who will win." In the next instant, he exploded forward at terrifying speed and closed the gap to Klein almost instantly, his attack diving in with a monstrous force, strong enough to crush his opponent in a single blow. But at the last possible second, Klein reacted. Without a hint of panic, he timed his sword perfectly and blocked Randall's attack head-on. But there was one thing everyone still remembered about that sword. The warning had been given earlier at the start of the duel. The moment it struck a mana-infused blade, it would shatter. Just as predicted, the moment Klein blocked Randall's mana-infused strike, cracks spread across the blade before it completely disintegrated, fragments of the sword flying through the air. Seeing that, Randall immediately sneered triumphantly. "Serves you right," he sneered with that, "your sword is." But before he could finish his sentence, Klein suddenly smiled. "Yes," he said calmly, "now it's finally complete. A weapon for hunting." For a brief moment, Randall couldn't fathom what he meant. Then it happened. Klein lunged forward in the blink of an eye. Instead of treating the shattered weapon as useless, he used the broken blade itself like a short magical dagger designed for close combat. Before Randall could react properly, Klein stepped directly into his range and slashed at point-blank distance, a sharp cut flashing across the battlefield. Randall's arm was severed. The detached limb flew through the air as blood sprayed everywhere, and Randall's expression contorted into utter shock and agony. He let out a horrific scream as he collapsed backward. At that moment, someone loudly declared, "The duel is over." Meanwhile, among the onlookers, a man stared at the battlefield in disbelief as he thought to himself. Just as the young master said, Lanrant swordsmanship can be executed with minimal mana, but that should only be possible for a battle-hardened knight. Yet he performed everything perfectly from stance to blade path, and on top of that, he deliberately baited his opponent into breaking his sword so he could attack at point-blank range. The man could hardly believe what he had witnessed. In any case, this was the young master's perfect victory on the field. Randall continued to scream in agony after losing his arm. Immediately, a group of healers rushed to him in a panic. "Hurry and staunch the bleeding. Quickly, hold his arm down and cast sleep magic." The entire area descended into chaos as the healers desperately tried to stabilize him. Meanwhile, Klein watched the scene calmly before asking, "Can that be reattached?" However, despite his calm tone, he clearly looked disappointed. After hearing the severity of the wound, the healers quickly replied, "No, it only needs basic healing magic. We'll have to prepare a prosthetic arm." Hearing that, Klein simply responded, "Oh, really? That's it." At the same time, deep inside his mind, he thought quietly, even after 200 years, healing magic hasn't advanced much then from the other side. His father called to him with a serious expression. "Didn't you feel anything after seeing a severed limb?" The moment Klein heard that, his expression shifted slightly. "Right, I'm not Archimand right now," he reminded himself inwardly. Then Klein quietly began to walk away from the scene as if everything were over. Moving forward calmly, he thought to himself, "Should I pretend to be terrified now?" At that exact moment, the real mastermind behind the whole affair finally stepped forward, his face full of skepticism and anger as he shouted, There's no reason for Randall to lose. Do you even know how much I paid to hire that night? Before he could get any more mad, Klein's father suddenly spoke from behind in a cold, authoritative voice, Count Cromwell. The man immediately turned to him. As agreed, Klein's father continued, admit your mistake and comply with the victor's demands. Count Cromwell's face twisted with frustration and despair. I've lost my son and my exclusive knight. How could I? But before he could even finish his words, something horrifying happened. In a flash, it looked as if his head had been cleanly severed from his body. For a fraction of a second, everyone froze. The scene then focused on Klein's cold, emotionless eyes as he stared directly at him, Count Cromwell. The next moment revealed the truth. Count Cromwell was still alive. His head hadn't actually been cut off. His whole body trembled violently as he frantically touched his neck again and again, unable to comprehend what had happened. It was merely an illusion caused by the terrifying pressure of Klein's power. Yet to him it felt utterly real. Inside his mind, panic erupted. What just happened? My neck. Absolutely. Sweat poured down his face as fear completely consumed him. Klein then stood directly before him and spoke in a chilling voice. As the victor of this duel, I order you to confess your crimes before the Lord of the North, and kneel to beg for forgiveness. His voice grew even heavier, almost as if death itself were speaking through him. Bow your head and beg for mercy, for you will be crushed under the weight of your sins and repentance. The moment those words reached Count Cromwell's ears, true dread swallowed him. He could almost see death standing right above him. His entire body shook uncontrollably. Cold sweat streamed down ceaselessly, and even breathing became difficult. Unable to resist any longer, he finally collapsed. I was wrong. He stammered in terror. At the same time, narration revealed the truth behind the terrifying ability Klein had used. It was originally a voice used to call the souls of the dead, the call of the dead. It is a soul-disrupting technique exclusive to summoners, a horrifying power capable of inducing extreme terror in the living. Count Cromwell completely collapsed before Klein, trembling uncontrollably. He knelt and bowed deeply while begging for forgiveness. Moreover, I insulted the young master's mother, Grand Duchess Claire, he confessed desperately. Please forgive me. Those watching the scene could hardly believe what they were witnessing. One spectator stared in complete shock and murmured, Am I really seeing this? Who would have thought a pillar of a branch family would crumble like that? Meanwhile, Klein slowly raised his broken sword toward the sky. Though the blade was shattered, the pressure around him felt even heavier than before. There, before everyone gathered, he began to speak with absolute confidence. Well, it starts here, his voice ringing across the battlefield. Everyone standing here listened carefully, a declaration of my existence. The atmosphere fell silent at once. To put this house back on the right path, I am the challenger of this duel and its rightful victor. His eyes remained utterly steady as he continued. The son of Grand Duchess Claire, and the second son of the North's strongest knight, Heinkel Lainrant. Then, proudly proclaiming his name before those present, he finished, I am Klein Lainrant. After that powerful declaration, the scene shifted to a completely different location. The air there solemn and far heavier, almost sacred. A man could be seen entering a quiet hall while nearby a priest prayed softly. We will go where your light does not reach, even if the path is perilous, even if it brings pain. Please watch over our intent, O God of light. At that moment, the man who entered stepped forward and said, Your Eminence. The priest slowly turned to him. Yes, Garrison. His voice sounded grave. What's the matter? Garrison's expression stayed serious as he answered at once. The surveillance target has been attacked. The attackers were a summoner and his undead. For a brief moment, silence filled the room. I need to verify this, Garrison added firmly. I must confirm it myself. However, the cardinal showed no sign of concern. Instead, he calmly replied, No need to worry about that. It's all part of the plan. He was sent in cooperation with the Empire. Garrison's eyes narrowed slightly. The cardinal continued as if explaining something perfectly reasonable. A summoner is a natural catalyst for fear. Those terrified by their appearance will surely seek the divine. Countless people will flock to our holy church. Then his voice grew colder. Understand this, Garrison. If we can revive the holy church and spread the God's will through a handful of sacrifices. But before he could finish, Garrison suddenly moved. In the blink of an eye, he seized the cardinal's throat with overwhelming force. His eyes filled with fury as he hissed through clenched teeth. A servant of the temple has stooped to petty political games and struck deals with heresy. In the next instant, with sheer strength alone, Garrison crushed the cardinal's cognitive center completely. Blood sprayed everywhere as his body collapsed lifeless to the floor. Immediately after, another voice suddenly echoed through the area. Are you feeling any better? The man slowly stepped forward across the blood-slicked hall and looked directly at Garrison before speaking in a calm but mocking tone. You haven't changed, Garrison Vermin. Who would have thought you've killed more clerics than the summoners ever did? A fleeting smile crossed his face as he continued. The people of the Holy Church should really know what you're hiding inside that belly of yours. Narration then revealed the identity of the man standing there. He was the Archbishop of the Holy Church. Garrison glared at him coldly after hearing that. Was this your doing? The Archbishop simply replied without hesitation, of course not. I merely authorized it. Then his expression grew more serious, and he added, I brought a piece of information related to your surveillance target. The moment those words were spoken, Garrison moved to strike him at once. His fist shot forward with enough force to kill a normal man instantly. But the Archbishop's speed far exceeded normal limits. Before Garrison could even realize what had happened, the Archbishop had vanished from directly in front of him and reappeared elsewhere, easily avoiding the blow. Then the Archbishop calmly continued as if nothing had occurred. When summoning magic is used, it certainly leaves traces. He held up a strange, cross-shaped object as he explained, this is the cruciform that contains those traces. It belonged to the summoner you killed. Garrison's expression hardened as he listened carefully. The Archbishop continued, one of the traces belongs to the calling spell, a type of summoning art that raises corpses which the Empire is actively researching. Then his voice dropped a bit, but the remaining trace is different. It matches the original form of summoning magic, the kind that manipulates souls instead of corpses. Garrison reacted immediately to those words, the original form of summoning magic, right? The Archbishop answered calmly. The atmosphere suddenly grew much heavier. It meant there had been two summoners present at the scene. Then the Archbishop stared straight into Garrison's eyes and spoke slowly, making sure each word carried its full weight. Listen carefully, Garrison. Your surveillance target, the second son of the Lainrant family. A short silence followed,